And why don't you just give us a little explaining of the basics of how drones equipped with LIDAR, thermal imagery, technology, how it's revolutionizing the commercial roofing industry, as well as just about every other industry. Uh,
Mhm.
it's really making a huge impact. But commercial roofing, let's talk about that. How's it impacting?
Yeah, for sure. And I actually did some market research before I went on this video with you. So I went to a few different Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, and alignables and things like that. And I just simply asked a question: are you using drones, and in what capacity are you? And it was pretty interesting. Most people are either not using drones at all, or they're just using it for marketing. Good start. Okay. Like that's a good start, but you're missing an entire aspect of this industry. So, marketing aspect is great, and you can definitely produce some really good before after shots and use it for Facebook and things like that. But like the resolution on some of these cameras, you can absolutely see damage on those images, and you can use those images to essentially close more leads and just show the client their roof. And it's very quick. It's very easy. You can generate 3D models. You can do the thermal assessments and see see any sort of water damage or any sort of heat loss issues. The LIDAR side is definitely a lot more expensive than a beginner drone, but there's a lot of
Hmm.
applications with LIDAR as well. But for the most part,
Yeah.
just standard photogrammetry, standard imagery, you can produce so much incredible data and detail just with that. Like the drone that Cam was flying, it was a 4K resolution, and the data that it produces is phenomenal. I know the telecom industry is using them very aggressively right now, and they are able to see all the cables and all the labels going into all the arrays, like from the. It looks up into the arrays to see all the different cables and labels and things like that. You
Huh.
have really high resolution zoom on these things as well. I have one HVAC company I'm using right now, and they're using a drone simply so they can have the drone fly up there, zoom in, and read the data plates on the HVAC units. Like, that's what they said. They're like, that right there is huge for us. So they'll go out there, take a
That's
picture of the
huge.
data plates, and they don't have to get up there. And the data is phenomenal. And it's not just about producing better data. That's not really the biggest issue. It's the speed, the efficiency, and the safety aspect, right? It just takes one fall. Like, I think roofing has so much potential because the less amount of times you have to actually get a ladder, the less chance of having a catastrophic fall and then losing your source of income. Like
Hmm.
these drones, they may be expensive, but for what they can provide you and the risk mitigation it provides you, it's invaluable. Like you can't even put a price on that. So
Yeah.
there's just so
I
much
can.
you can do with them.
Yeah, I could tell you, man. First off, I've been roofing the biggest part of my life. I've been climbing on roofs my entire life, and then being in the army, rappelling faster, all that stuff was some of my favorite things I've ever done on this planet. But something happened, maybe fatherhood or just surviving too many near deaths, and really realizing how precious life is. That all of that
Mhm.
accumulates to. I still climb on very tall ladders today. Now granted, I'm mainly on gigantic commercial roofs, which hopefully and usually most have, you know, access, internal access hatches and stuff. But also when you talk about multifamily, they usually don't. And I get freaked out. I'm not gonna lie. That's probably the biggest anxiety I have anymore is climbing up a 25, 28, foot ladder, which most of the time, the multifamily you're gonna need to. And there's just so many variables that you can't control the you know how the gutters are hanging if they're loose, all the different things, the tie off points. Do you have any? And it gets scary. So I'm so glad I came down to relight that fire, to belief that I can do it. It's not too technologically, it's not um too cumbersome. I can do it, and I need to be doing it more. I'm 43, and and I've been, like I said, far too lucky and blessed. So adding some smarts and some intelligence into my equation is just what I need for this point in time in my life. So flying a drone is going to be, just a huge part of my adaptation moving forward. you know what are some other you know, explain to me, what is LIDAR? Like, what does that even mean? I know, can it see through trees?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Let me go back real quick on one thing you mentioned though. So on that aspect, something that I have to work with roofers a lot is whenever I work with them, they're like, "Hey, we're waiting for a notice to proceed before we go on a roof." Yes. However, that's why you have a drone. And so that's one of the funny things I have to get past that point of like, you don't have to actually have that notice to proceed because you can just fly and be off that site. Like that's not an issue. So it's something else to consider. So I just love having that conversation. So yeah, all right, back to LiDAR. LiDAR is awesome. And that's what we really focused on with our company before we switched over to this role. But LiDAR is a light detection and ranging. What it does is it sends out a beam of light and it measures the amount of time it takes to return to the sensor. Okay, so it measures the speed of light. Well, the speed of light is 300,000 kilometers per second. Okay, it's able to go out there and measure how long that return is within like incredibly small an amount of detail. So you're able to get somewhere between 2 and 5 centimeters of accuracy with each one of those measurements, and so you're getting an actual measurement of a point on the earth, right? So and then the sensors that we use, it can be between 250,000 and 1.5 million pulses of light per second, like just boom, right? Huge amounts of information. And so what you're doing is you're able to go through there and get accurate measurements on the ground, 1 million+ measurements as you're going through and scanning an area. And it's incredibly accurate. So with that, it's what's called an absolute accuracy. So if you have photogrammetry, if you're taking picture here, right on the ground, you're still going to have some estimations of that overlap, right? You have to have a lot of pictures to make really good determinations of what that measurement actually is. So there's a lot of distortion that happens. Well, this is a point measurement with extreme accuracy. So it is absolutely accurate every single time for every one of those measurements. And the technology is not new. Okay, this was actually back in 1960s during the Apollo missions. They actually had LiDAR measuring the moon. That was part of the thing that they were doing out there. So like, it's nothing new. But the big thing about LiDAR is that it's progressed to a point to where now it can drop. It's so small it can now fit onto a drone. So really phenomenal in that aspect. It's been used it's been used heavily by fixed wing for a long time. It's been used on the ground for a long time, and now it's become small enough and light enough to go on a drone. And the great thing about a drone is that from a fixed wing aircraft, if you're sending out 250,000, 1 million points per second, but if you're at like 10,000 feet, you're still going to have a very wide dispersion of where those beams of light are at. On a drone, you're going to have all of that data on a very low altitude, and you can get extremely dense information in that one section. And so from an aircraft, you're getting somewhere between 10 and 20 points per square meter of detail. From a drone, you're looking at 600 to 6,000 points per square meter of measurements. Wow. It's just absurd. And so it definitely does have a lot of use case in the roofing industry. The problem with anything that has to do with LiDAR is you're looking at a lot more money, and that's the biggest issue with it, because LiDAR as a whole is a very expensive technology. But it has dropped down in price substantially over the last few years. So at this point, it might actually have some use case for your specific projects. Now, the other cool thing about LiDAR as well is people like to say it sees through trees. Not entirely, okay? Instead, what it does is because you're sending so many beams of light down at the ground, you are having an occasional beam of light that is able to penetrate in between the trees and in between the branches to hit the bare earth underneath it, right? So although 95% of the beams of light are hitting the top canopy, if you're sending 1 million beams of light per second, you can essentially remove all the vegetation layer, and you can get a bare earth layer as well. So LIDAR,
Wow.
because of that specific aspect of it, it's being used a lot in the Amazons and the Amazon rainforest, and also down in Mexico and things like that. They've been discovering a lot more Mayan runes that are beneath the
Hmm.
really thick vegetation. So really, really cool technology. It does have some use cases for this industry, but I caution people too much on LIDAR, because for the most part, photogrammetry and standard imagery is sufficient for what you're doing, and it's a lot cheaper.
Yeah. Cool. Well,
Mhm.
let's also jump onto thermal imaging.
Yep.
That I've used a lot, and I know a lot of our listeners use thermal a lot, whether it's interior or exterior upon a roof. It can be particularly telling about a roof's condition. Can you discuss, how this technology helps identify potential leaks,
Mhm.
insulation issues, before they become, major structural issues?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things we're doing right now. I would have my thermal drone with me, but it's currently being used. We're doing a large scale mapping of some large areas up in the Tulsa area right now. And what they're looking for is they're trying to find any sort of heat variances. So as the temperature changes, they're trying to see what part of the roof is changing temperatures quicker than others, right? So
Mm.
you're able to see structural damage, any sort of water leakage, any sort of intrusion, any insulation faults, things of that capacity you can use for thermal imagery. I know whenever you looked at the images that I showed you from that rooftop, I was learning from you on this, because you were over here like, you have this and this and this, and you were able to take so much data from this, and
Mm.
that's the cool thing about this is I have a lot of different technologies, but like you're the expert on what you're doing. And so I can just provide you those resources for you can do those sort of analysis. But it's really cool. I know one of the things I love doing is taking the drone in the air, and as it's in the air, you can see the temperature variances in real time, but you also have a side by side of RGB, so you can see the regular light, and then you can see the infrared right next to each other. And so because of that, you can make an immediate assessment of what you're looking at, because you have both sides of the spectrum you can transfer back and forth for. And
Yeah, that's
yeah,
cool.
it's really, really neat. And then the other thing as well is you can actually click on the screen, and it will tell you a point analysis of the temperature of that specific location,
That's right.
which
I saw that. It's so cool.
is huge, right?
It is,
Like this
man.
is all really, really cool stuff, man.
You could have somebody, inside and you have a radio, like, guys, AC unit number whatever, however you have it mapped, and they could be there, and that's where the leak is. You cut
Hmm.
down on so much time, manpower, and you're just executing and finding a solution so much faster with providing the correct data at the right time, and it's usually right then when you're there.
Yep.
And we were talking about the applications. It's something that I'm always talking and pushing contractors when they, ask me how do I get into the commercial roofing industry? How do I, from the residential side, how do I get leads? How do I, get into these relationships? And I'm always trying to nudge them into getting, what we call master service agreements, being able to offer, something that most people aren't doing, and that's providing, consistent real time information and data of the current condition of these properties. And
Yep.
it's huge when you're battling against the insurance carrier in a gigantic multi-million-dollar claim, and the insurance is trying to say, oh, that's old damage, or that's where, whatever it may be, whatever excuse they're using. And you can provide a year, 2 years of historical
Yep.
data, of thermal imagery, every little bit. It's so impactful. It just
Hmm.
brings victories to the policyholder, to the contractor so much faster, and it's just a really good source of truth, that you can rely back on. It's historically there forever, and it's time stamped, and there's no getting out of that one.
Hmm.
And with technology, it's getting easier and easier for you to push a button remotely, and someone just just go do its mapped out scenario. They're doing it
Hmm.
with agricultural, with everything. And then you mentioned it earlier, insurance carriers are using drone technology now. They're going out
Yep.
and doing pre, during, and after claim data collection their own. And
Yep.
so you better, if you're not using it, you need to get on the ball with it. And I urge you, go check out these guys. They're doing some really cool stuff.